Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are tearing into a story that feels honestly like it was ripped straight out of a modern Cinderella playbook. It's this absolutely fascinating look at what happens when two totally opposite worlds collide. We've got hidden talents, high stakes, and this completely unbelievable forced scenario that paradoxically actually pushes people to reveal their truest selves. Okay, let's dive into this. The central premise here is a classic trope, right? But it's got some really deep modern twists. Think about it. What actually happens when a wealthy, hyper-cynical businessman and a completely destitute runaway are forced into a fake relationship? It's not just some quirky rom-com setup. This is a desperate measure born out of pure necessity. And it ends up challenging literally everything they think they know about love and trust. But hey, before we get to the fake engagement itself, we've got to understand exactly who is making this bizarre deal. Look at the sheer stark contrast between these two. On one hand, we've got Alexey. He's 35, a totally self-made millionaire who built this massive wholesale empire from scratch. But he's got baggage. Thanks to a really painful past, specifically an ex who dumped him for a wealthier friend, he wears cynicism like a suit of armor. To him, relationships, they're just transactions. Then you contrast that with Evgenia. She is a 21-year-old runaway. She has absolutely nothing to her name except a stray dog named Pierocheka. And fun fact here, she actually named the dog after the budget grocery chain where she found her. So yeah, these two exist in entirely different universes. And that's exactly what makes their eventual collision so incredibly compelling. To truly grasp Zhenya's vulnerability, you have to look at how fast her life unravels. We're talking just a few weeks here. It all starts with relentless harassment from her mother's new husband, Boris. And when Evgenia bravely speaks up and tells her mom, she is completely dismissed, called a selfish liar, forced to flee her own home. Then, just yesterday, the absolute worst-case scenario happens. Guys on a moped snatch her backpack. Poof, her phone, her money, all of it gone. Which brings us to today. She is entirely stranded at this rural gas station, fiercely defending a stray dog from some local thugs. And it's at this exact gas station where Alexey, who's just driving by, steps in to defuse the situation with those thugs. Now, he's probably expecting a streetwise grifter, right? But instead, she hits him with this blunt, completely disarming honesty. She says, "I have no qualifications, but I clean well, and my borscht and pelmeni are really tasty." I mean, wow, that just cuts right through his corporate transactional mindset. And Alexey, who just so happens to be looking for housekeeper for his giant empty St. Petersburg estate, makes this totally uncharacteristic split-second decision. He looks at this exhausted girl, looks at her dog, and just gives her a job. So, just like that, Evgenia is swept out of danger and into this incredibly quiet, almost surreal new life. It is very much the calm before the storm. She settles into his guest house, living quietly in the shadows of this massive estate. She cleans the main mansion so stealthily he barely even notices she's there. She cooks her famous beef stew, and she just spends her free time chilling with Pietroshka. He even hooks her up with a company phone. For the first time in a really long time, Evgenia feels safe. And, more importantly for Alexey's pristine little world, she remains completely out of the way. She is playing the role of the invisible staff member to absolute perfection. Now, what's really interesting here is the turning point. One day, Alexey accidentally leaves his phone on her table, and he spots this cheap, unassuming little sketchbook. But when he flips through it, he is absolutely stunned. Evgenia isn't just a runaway who knows how to clean. She is a deeply, deeply gifted artist. This book is jam-packed with these incredibly lifelike, expressive pencil portraits, pictures of his deputy, of her dog, of the world around her. He even brings in an art expert later who confirms her raw, undeniable talent. And suddenly, boom, the class dynamics completely shift. To Alexey, Evgenia is no longer just the housekeeper. She is a real person with this immense hidden depth. But of course, the piece doesn't last. Enter the first major narrative hurdle, Alexey's glamorous, incredibly snobbish ex-girlfriend, Alina. She shows up unannounced late one night, spots Evgenia's setup, and the jealousy just instantly flares up. She demands Alexey get rid of her, literally saying, "Hey for a VIP job search package for this girl, just so long as she's not sleeping with my man." It is such a cruel, highly territorial move, and it's rooted purely in class prejudice. But Alexey? He flatly refuses. There is no way he's going to let his superficial ex dictate the life of a girl who's just trying to find her footing. Which brings us to the inciting incident of our main drama. Out of nowhere, Alexey gets some urgent news. His parents are coming to town. And on top of that, his father, Mikhail, has this serious, newly discovered heart condition. The doctors were very clear. Any emotional distress could literally be fatal. Knowing his parents desperately want to see him settled down and happy, Alexey approaches Xenia with this fast-paced, wild plea. He basically says, pretend to be my loving fiancé, keep my fragile father perfectly calm, and let's just survive this week-long family visit together. Understandably, Zhenya is absolutely terrified. Her imposter syndrome kicks into maximum overdrive. I mean, she assumes the expectation for a self-made millionaire's parents is going to be this glamorous, wealthy, highly sophisticated business lady, someone exactly like Alina, right? But the reality is, Zhenya is a sincere, vulnerable, 21-year-old runaway artist standing there in a simple, modest dress. She is thoroughly 100% convinced that they are going to take one look at her and instantly realize she's nothing more than a fraud playing dress-up. Let's move on and see how this builds, because the actual restaurant meeting defies every single one of Zhenya's fears. Alexey's parents are not the elitist snobs she had pictured in her head. Not at all. They are grounded, incredibly warm people from a rural logging town. The mother, Nina Antonovna, is highly observant, sure, but she is so kind. And get this, before they even arrived, Alexey had secretly emailed them photos of Zhenya's artwork. So the parents don't care at all about her lack of money. They instantly fall in love with her sincerity and the obvious soul in her drawings. They embrace her immediately. You can practically feel Zhenya's relief through the screen. But just as Zhenya finally starts to relax, the tension violently spikes. Because mid-dinner, guess who happens to be at the exact same upscale restaurant? The ex-girlfriend Alina. She spots the happy family gathering, walks right up to the table, and attempts to publicly, utterly humiliate Zhenya. Looking right at Alexey's fragile father and his observant mother, she drops this calculated, devastating bomb meant to completely shatter the illusion. She sneers, "It's a disgrace to sit at the same table with a housekeeper." And this brilliantly illustrates the core of our story. Because instead of clutching her pearls in horror, Alexey's mother, Nina Antonovna, doesn't miss a single beat. She stares Alina down and fiercely defends Zhenya. She points out that thousands of young women work honest jobs, like cleaning, while they study or figure out their lives. In one fell swoop, she completely strips away the classist shame Alina tried to inflict. She coldly declares she has absolutely no intention of listening to nasty things about her future daughter-in-law. It is a massive emotional payoff for Zhenya. After everything she's been through, she is finally defended and accepted unconditionally by a true mother figure. So after the intense, high-stakes drama of the restaurant, the scene shifts to a much quieter, way more intimate atmosphere. The parents, who were actually completely thrilled with the evening despite the rude interruption, happily go to sleep in the guest rooms. This leaves Alexey and Zhenya completely alone in this sprawling, quiet garden under the night sky. The fake performance is officially over for the day. The adrenaline has faded, leaving the two of them to finally process everything that just happened, and, maybe more importantly, how surprisingly natural all of it actually felt. So, the crucial point is what happens in this quiet, totally unguarded moment. Alexey finally drops all his cynical armor, he turns to Zhenya, and he just lays it all out. He says, "Let's actually be together. This isn't a game. I want to see you every day." He realizes right then and there that this forced, fake contract actually brought him exactly what he had been missing his whole life. He doesn't want the sophisticated transactional business lady. He wants the sincere, incredibly talented girl who makes his massive, empty house finally feel like a real home. Which leaves us with this final lingering question. Can a fake arrangement actually be the exact thing that strips away our societal pretenses and reveals our truest desires? I think this story beautifully reminds us that when you strip away the heavy expectations of wealth, class, and status, authenticity and genuine vulnerability are always going to triumph. Alexey and Zhenya started playing a game of love out of sheer desperation, only to find out they were finally being completely honest with themselves. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, remember to look past the surface.